And thank you for your patience. I know members of the media have their hands full covering the wildfire in East County right now. So I know many of you are joining us online. Happy to continue to provide the briefing. Appreciate your time and attention this morning. Happy September, everyone. Pleased to provide you another one of these monthly briefings on items that are coming up in the month ahead, as well as, importantly, to give an update to the city on our continued efforts to address homelessness. With me this morning are San Diego City Council member Stephen Whitburn, who represents Council District 3, Hafsa Keika, the Director of Homeless Strategies and Solutions Department, James Carter, the Deputy Director of Homeless Strategies and Solutions, and Ketra Carter, no relation, right? Who's our Outreach Program Manager with Homeless Strategies and Solutions. As I mentioned, I want to start this morning by talking about the subject that dominates so much of our time and attention. It is the subject matter that most San Diegans talk to me about, and it is my administration's top priority, which is homelessness. This challenge is enormously complex, but our strategy to get folks off the streets is simple and can be summed up in 3 words: outreach, shelter, and housing. Let me tell you a bit more. You all have been very generous in helping to cover many of the shelter expansions that we have announced in recent months, as well as many of our housing action items that we've covered in the first year or so of my administration. We have more shelter coming online in the days, weeks, and months ahead, and I look forward to joining many of you at those announcements when they come along. With housing action, we passed our first housing action package. It became law already. Our second one will be considered by the City Council sometime around the turn of the year. But today we want to focus our attention on the first prong of our homeless strategy, which is outreach. Just about every one of our success stories of people transitioning from experiencing homelessness off the streets and into permanent housing starts with outreach, meeting people where they are at. And I want to say right at the beginning, the people who do this work are truly remarkable. Gaining the trust of an individual who's experiencing the difficult circumstances that is living on the streets requires a tremendous mix of patience and persistence. These are folks who are often turned down in terms of their offers of assistance, but who never take no for an answer. And we as a community are better off because they do this important work. We know that people experiencing homelessness have many different reasons and circumstances for why they find themselves on the streets. Their circumstances and reasons are unique as they are. Some have fallen on hard times because of a rent increase or job loss. Others have behavioral health or substance use disorder issues. Some have suffered domestic violence or endured a youth bouncing around in the foster care system with no social safety net there to catch them. What our outreach workers do is to identify these folks and help overcome the barriers that they're experiencing to get back on their feet, a process that can take many contacts to establish the trust and willingness to accept help from a system that many feel failed them. Now, in an effort to make this process more effective, our Homeless Strategies and Solutions Department, along with many local partners, are holding twice a month events in the communities around the city to bring all the services into one place for the people who need them. These 3-day events concentrate many of the resources that people who are struggling to get back on their feet might need into a one-stop shop that operates where we have the highest amount of need. We have held 13 of these coordinated outreach events since last fall, with the most recent one focused in the Hillcrest North Park area. Since last October, I'm pleased to report that we have provided 1,731 instances of service to unsheltered folks at these events. We've had over 900 people get connected to benefits like CalFresh and Medi-Cal. More than 500 people made progress towards placement in housing with help getting necessary documentation. Let me say that one more time. More than 500 people made progress towards placement in housing with help getting the necessary documentation. I'll tell you a little bit more. These services include things that they need to stabilize their situation and get placed into housing. This can include accessing documentation like IDs and birth certificates, enrolling in public assistance programs and VA benefits, medical services like wound care, and referrals to medical and behavioral health services. I'd like to show you all a very short video that'll help you get an idea of how these events work to bring people who oftentimes don't know where to begin to help get themselves back on track and to get off the streets. Cue up the video, please.
Right now we're setting up for what we have is a coordinated outreach. And what we do is we have field teams go out into the neighborhoods, engage with individuals who are experiencing unsheltered living. We'll do that at 8:15, connect them here at the base of operations so we have tax, safe parking, and workforce development. A plethora of resources that would generally take 2 to 3 to 4 months to accomplish.
You know, I need help. I do need help. I don't want to have my granddaughter exposed to the outside like this if I don't have to.
These are going to be things that are going to help us match you to the right supportive housing that you may need.
Honestly, I need help, and I know that I heard that you guys really do help. You know, so this is where I need to be.
So first and foremost, just like always, I want to say thank you to each and every one of you for the commitment you have coming out each and every time. This really is helping. It is connecting one-stop shop for all of the resources and services that would generally take someone 2 weeks, a month, 3 months, depending upon the level of need, right?
Now I'm reaching out, and I don't want to be, if I don't have to, then I don't want to, but I need to think about my granddaughter, and I need to think about myself.
We can still do taxes right now. So if you haven't done that, you can do them here with Carmen today, okay?
You don't see us, but these have been going on for over a year. We've been silent, but we're steady, we're engaged, we're committed.
You never think that you're going to end up like this, but it happens, so I'm going to take everything in stride. I'm not giving up hope because I know that when there's no way, there's a way.
Gotcha. Thank you for that, and please extend our appreciation to your team. This is just one of the elements that we're doing to help get people off the streets, and it's making a difference in jumpstarting the process of changing the circumstances that caused or is keeping folks unsheltered. One important aspect it highlights is our approach is the huge increase in collaboration amongst partners to deliver resources to the people who need it. This North Park event that you just saw had 19 different partners associated with it. In addition to the city, the Housing Commission, and its provider partners like PATH and Alpha Project, we also had at that event the County Office of Homeless Solutions, who sends out social workers, behavioral benefit specialists, and public health nurses. Dreams for Change, which offers workforce development and safe parking. Uplift San Diego, which takes people to the DMV for their license and ID. Courage to Call and the Veterans Administration, helping with veteran needs. And San Diego Youth Services and San Diego LGBT Community Center, as well as Father Joe's Village's Street Health and Healthcare in Action, providing wellness exams and referrals. As you can see, this is an all-hands effort, and the work it takes to get people to the help that they need is getting done. Of course, more is always necessary, and we're going to continue to find ways to do more because the need is so tremendous. Someone who's been helping to advocate for a comprehensive approach to address homelessness and whose district has hosted the largest number of these outreach events is Councilmember Stephen Whitburn, and so I'd like to invite him to the podium to say a few words. Councilmember?
Well, thank you very much, Mayor, and good morning, everyone. I'm Stephen Whitburn, and I represent downtown and the vibrant urban neighborhoods all around Balboa Park, including North Park, where the most recent coordinated outreach program was held. There are many people on the streets who don't accept help, but there are also many who do. And as you all have reported, San Diego is the least affordable housing market in the nation. People are struggling to pay the rent, and far too many wind up homeless on our streets. These coordinated outreach events can help keep each individual's period of homelessness as brief as possible. And one way, as the mayor mentioned, is by helping them to track down needed documents so that they can enroll in programs and services that will help them off the streets. Consider how important it is for someone to have a driver's license or a state ID card. It's hard to get one if you don't have a birth certificate or other documentation. And it can even be hard if you are living on the streets to even get to the DMV. This program helps people acquire a copy of their birth certificate, and then it will actually drive people to the DMV and help them navigate the process to get their ID. With that identification in hand, it is much easier then for these individuals to secure the other assistance that they need. That is just one example of the many ways that this program helps people end their period of homelessness. This program has helped many people in the areas that I represent in District 3, and I want to thank the mayor, I want to thank the Department of Homeless Strategies and Solutions, the other agencies involved, and the many service providers who have put this program together. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilmember. I appreciate your partnership and your leadership on this important issue. I think in a lot of ways, what we're describing today reflects the changes that we've made to this work. When I was on the City Council previously, we did events like this basically once a year. It was Project Homeless Connect. It was done springtime, brought everyone together, but it was one and done. What you've heard now is that we do this multiple times a month. It's repeated. And in fact, where we used to hold Project Homeless Connect downstairs at Golden Hall now is one of our city's largest homeless shelters, providing housing to hundreds of people every single night. I hope that's emblematic of our increased and stepped up efforts around outreach, our expansion of homeless shelter capacity, and remembering that outreach that leads to shelter that gets people housing ready and into permanent housing, thereby ending their individual homelessness. We have to continue to do this work, and we will do that. And we will, I know many of the members of the media are remote. We'll be happy to share the outreach video with you in case you weren't able to see it on the live feed. Take questions in just a moment, but I want to give a preview to some of the other issues that are coming up that may be of interest to you and to the public. I want to start by noting that on September the 8th, the Land Use and Housing Committee of the City Council will consider my recommendation for the redevelopment of the 43-acre sports arena site in the Midway District. Our proposed selection, the Midway Rising team, had the greatest number of affordable homes, as well as the largest sports arena to replace our existing arena, in addition to dedicating nearly half of the property to parks, plazas, and open space. I'm looking forward to that discussion, and assuming it is advanced out of committee, it should be heard by the full City Council on September the 13th. Also this month, we'll be bringing forward appointments to several important boards and commissions. In particular, I want to draw your attention to the Commission on the Status of Women, as well as the Privacy Advisory Board. Finally, later today, we'll be releasing our plans for the post-repair configuration of Park Boulevard. I want to remind folks, Park Boulevard don't look so good. There's a lot of potholes out there. It's a bit rough, and it's in the middle of our city's crown jewel, Balboa Park. We need to do better out there, and we will be doing better out there. Soon, city contractors and crews will go out there to begin resurfacing the remainder of that street. The northern end of that street was done earlier this year. The part basically Upus to the freeway, I-5, for those of you paying attention, will be resurfaced. As a part of that resurfacing effort, in addition to no potholes, San Diegans will be getting, I think, important additional amenities. This street will now be dedicated to three separate opportunities: a general purpose travel lane, a dedicated bus lane, and a protected bikeway. This thruway is one of the most important connections we have between the communities of North Park and downtown San Diego. It is one of our busiest bus corridors and a street that many use to access the incredible resources that are in Balboa Park. Street parking will remain in front of the World Beat Center, the Centro Coto de la Raza, as well as the in front of the Rose Garden. There additionally will be disabled parking spaces in those locations as well. We plan on replacing a large number of the parking spaces currently on Park Boulevard on Balboa Drive when it's repaired next year. We'll be formally announcing this plan tonight at the Balboa Park Committee meeting, but I wanted to share this information with you all in advance. I think we can all celebrate fewer potholes, more safety, more transportation choices in our city. With that, I'm happy to take some questions. I know many of them will be given via the live stream. Go ahead, please.
Governor Newsom's care corps recently passed the assembly, and you've been an outspoken supporter. But what can San Diegans expect to see? What change can we expect to see as a result?
Appreciate that question. In case in case it wasn't heard, question is about the legislature's adoption of the care corps proposal yesterday. And anticipated signature by Governor Newsom. I would start by expressing my appreciation to members of the legislature for adopting care court. This is a dramatic reform to behavioral health in the state of California. By way of context, less than 2 years ago, I was in the state legislature. I think a proposal of this magnitude would not have been politically possible. But the circumstances we find ourselves in, with a serious mental health crisis that is impacting the number of unsheltered individuals who live on our street, calls for new interventions. And this is a breaking of the broken status quo, where people have to get into crisis before they can get help. This provides a compulsory responsibility for those of us in government to serve the severely mentally ill, and a compulsory responsibility for those individuals to accept that help. This bill will be presumably signed by the governor. It's his proposal, so I'm feeling safe in making that bet. And it is effective January 1, 2023. My understanding is the bill was amended in the final days of the legislative process to have 2 phases of implementation. My understanding is the County of San Diego, where we are, will be in the first phase of implementation, and so that will start happening next summer 2023. So with this action, there's a substantial amount of funding that is being dedicated to stand up this effort of courts, behavioral health assistance, and housing. And so we'll have a number of months to be able to prepare for and anticipate its implementation. And then San Diego is raising our hand saying we want to be on the front end of that. The practical implication, well, we have to work on that. But what we have now with the legislature's endorsement is this responsibility, this shared agreement that we are going to prioritize these folks who many of us see in our day-to-day lives, and we're actually going to serve them with the housing and resources that they need. We'll have to spend a lot of time working on implementation. I'm all in on that. As I've mentioned, the outreach efforts, the shelter efforts, the housing efforts will be critical to that. What I think we'll have is an active and engaged partner at the county, at the state level, in the court system, with the individuals experiencing this, as well as their advocates in the process. So stay tuned. But this is some of the best news that I've heard in a while. I think all of us see people experiencing severe mental illness in the community every single day, and we wonder why is nothing being done to help these people. CareCorp provides an opportunity to change that and say that we do have services, we will prioritize them, we'll get them help. The estimates are this will impact roughly 12,000 Californians. I recognize that's a small sliver of our overall unsheltered population, and of course doesn't include just unsheltered people. Plenty of people with severe mental illness are sheltered as well. The point is that the hope is that we shift that paradigm from requiring crisis before they get help and create a situation where they get help before they end up in crisis.
And then the other question I have is regarding the heat wave. Mayor, we're heading into a holiday weekend with a massive heat wave. The state already issued flex alerts. What's your message to San Diegans?
Appreciate that question, and this is something that I ask San Diegans to take seriously. As you heard from our state government yesterday, we're asking folks to conserve energy. Obviously, do what you need to do to take care of yourselves and your loved ones, but if you can put off that load of laundry for a couple days, shut off a couple lights, delay powering your electric vehicle if necessary. We can all do something to reduce our energy load and to help us get through this time of peak demand, right? It's very hot in many parts of our city. It's even hotter in other parts of the state. And so we are all Californians. We all need to work together to take care of one another. I believe if we all do that, we can weather the next couple of days successfully from an energy perspective. That said, the city is doing what we can. Earlier this week, we announced a series of cool zone locations. These are largely city libraries and rec centers, but there are some other locations that are in there. They are open and available to the public. We have also asked city staff to go out and interact with our unsheltered population to hand out things like water, provide those lists of cool zones, and encourage people to utilize them, or better yet, utilize one of our shelters and start the pathway to getting off the streets. Our central library will be open on Monday in anticipation of these higher temperatures, and we're looking at other park and recreation sites that we can open as well, working closely with the County of San Diego as well as our own Office of Emergency Services. This is a moment we're taking extremely seriously. I ask San Diegans to take it seriously as well. You can help us avoid the kinds of disruptions to service that are so detrimental to many, many people. But in the meantime, take care of yourselves, look out for your neighbors, check up on one another. Let's get through these next couple of days. We've experienced this before. We know how to handle it. Encourage folks to do your part and just look out for one another. Any other questions? Yeah. I got one over here.
Yes, thank you, Mayor Gloria. Last week we saw several deaths of unsheltered people, and many of those fled the sweeps that were taking place. What is your goal going forward to reduce those deaths, and how will you ensure that people are protected, not only with the heat this week, but going forward, those have been pushed out of the encampments in several areas, including down Chula Vista, that are coming here for looking for assistance?
I think you make an interesting point in terms of the scale and scope of this particular problem. You know, often people like to talk about this as a downtown-only issue or San Diego only issue. I think the circumstances in Chula Vista, the large encampments in El Cajon and the large numbers we see there, and really at cities across the country, is it really requires a regional approach. Call on fellow mayors. We had a meeting recently of many of us to talk about what we can do respectively in our own communities to do more. I think what we're doing in the city of San Diego is something that is easily replicable in these other communities. But the answer to your question is much of what we are doing. Taking something that was a once-a-year outreach effort and turning it to an everyday effort. Let me be clear, what we talked about in these concentrated efforts are in addition to our daily outreach efforts in every council district to encourage those folks that you're talking about to come into services, to come into shelter, and to get assistance. It's a persistent effort, as we've mentioned, but it's necessary. We have to continue to expand shelter. I'm continuing to work every single day to increase the amount of shelter. Congregate, non-congregate, for women, for seniors, for children and families. This is not easy work. Believe me, if it was easy, other cities would be doing it. I note that many of them don't have any shelters whatsoever. What we have is a desire and a commitment to expand these, and we're continuing to do everything we can. Hafsa and her team spend a tremendous amount of time trying to negotiate those deals, and the one that I can say with certainty at this point is we will have an additional, at Midway, is it 200, 150?
About 150.
150. We should have soon 150 additional shelter beds in the Midway community. We know there's a large concentration of unsheltered folks that are there. It is far better to be in the tent where it's air conditioned, where there's food, where there's water, where there's services, than it is to be on the sidewalk. And I recognize that a shelter is not an ideal environment, but I will tell you it's better than the street. And I would say that folks are voting with their feet because we have a high level of utilization. On every daily basis, we're north of 90% of those beds are occupied, often substantially more. So I think even the unsheltered folks recognize this is preferable, but it is not the final point. Our final point is housing, right? And the way that we can do that is by getting people into shelter, as Councilmember Whitburn was discussing, address the challenges. Many of us who are successfully housed struggle in this housing economy. What is it for someone who has a behavioral health issue, a substance use issue, et cetera? If they can work with our shelter providers, with our outreach workers, et cetera, we can identify those problems, remove those barriers, and get people into housing. This is the best situation, the best approach that I'm aware of, but I always welcome additional feedback and information. We're currently exploring expansion of our safe parking lots, creation of safe villages under the council members' leadership. We got more coming, but the answer is an all-hands-on-deck approach. I think that's illustrated by what we've spotlighted today with outreach, but you'll see more of it in the coming days around shelter and importantly around housing. Quick footnote, the proposal for the Midway Rising at our sports arena site envisions over 2,000 low-income homes on that particular property. That's a substantial increase in our overall inventory, and it is just one of the many proposals that we're working on to try and increase the amount of low-income housing that is in the community, housing that could be suitable for the folks that you're asking about. Anyone else? Well, very good. I appreciate you all being here today. Be safe, drink lots of water, stay out of the sun, and we'll be back here again next month to give you a briefing again. Thank you guys very much.
Great job.
Thank you. Thanks for being here.
Yeah.
Thanks, Sam. Get back out on the streets.
Yeah.
Yeah. That video was fun.
Oh, thank you.
I know that's not easy.
Makes me cry. Thank you, Councilmember, for your support. Great comments.